Welcome to Slope Reliability, the show where we learn about reliability, observability, and resilience one day at a time. I'm your host, Stephen Townsend. Welcome back to Slope Reliability. I'm Stephen Townsend, and this is the show where we learn about SRE, observability, and technology leadership 1 or 2 weeks at a time. If any of you are working inside a dysfunctional organization, stuck in functional silos, battling internal quicksand, spending personal time trying to get your real work done, all the while rapidly heading towards burnout, then according to my guest today, you're not alone. To tackle these problems, today's guest, Rob Roe, read the popular business books, but found them lacking practical execution advice. Then he turned to academic research, completing a master's thesis titled The Integral Business Architecture, which combined his global business experience with academic frameworks. Rob was lucky enough to have the chance to successfully implement this work into a small part of Telstra and 2 unicorn startups. Rob, good to have you on the show. How are you going today?
I'm going well, Stephen. Thanks for that. Thanks for the introduction. I think the point I hope to make in this is we're not alone. You know, my big forehead has been flattened by hitting my head against brick walls. And I'm sure, I see you smiling, I'm sure many of the audience can relate to that. So, and it's amazing, like, especially in the front line and the team leads level and stuff like that, we all see it, right?
Yeah.
But you go and try and talk to anyone higher up, senior middle management executives, and they go, nah, that's all too hard. Yeah. So anyway, I'm here to vent and share and anything else.
So this came about from actually a previous episode where we talked about team topologies with Luke McManus, and we mentioned some of the things. I was talking about how do you actually get this going in an organization unless you are the CEO, right? How do you make this happen? And so the loose theme for today is, you know, it's a simple thing: how to change the world. Easy peasy.
Let's narrow that down slightly to how to change the organizational world, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, and that episode was with a colleague of mine, Luke McManus. You know, he's the APJ lead for team topologies. I'm a team topologies advocate. And team topologies is classic into what I've found. It's a part of the solution. It's not the complete solution, but it was a piece I'd been looking for a while. I didn't have it when I wrote the master's thesis, etc. I didn't have it when I was working at Telstra, but it just makes sense. So I just gravitated towards that plus other things. So let's answer your question. How do you change the organizational world, right? Well, the first thing is, wouldn't it be great if you were the CEO and you actually had the board backing, right?
Yeah.
But that's not reality. And I'll tell you why I think that's not reality. Because the problems all stem from, in the first place, we have functional silos, right? When we have functional silos, we then start causing other problems. And the other problems are, well, who do we promote within a functional silo? And the research out there has found we promote experts. We promote people really good at that function, the best developer, the best project manager, the best brain surgeon, right? What we don't promote is someone who thinks more broadly, right? And research out of Yale University shows in the sales world, they got a whole bunch of data. We promote the best salesperson, but really the best sales manager is someone who collaborates. And when we cross functional silos boundaries and we even compromise to get a better total outcome, we get whacked at the end of the year review because, you know, why were you doing that? And look at Joe Blow who's doing all this. And what the research showed is if you do promote the best salesperson, the actual team they are now managing performs worse than if you promote someone broader. So the first problem is we're pushing up the functional silos, the wrong sort of people. And other research has shown that as well.
The organization as well, like we reward as well people who get into management, even if it isn't necessarily the thing they're strong at or going to be strong at, right? There isn't necessarily a path in every organization to continue just being really good at the thing that you do, like best in your field, without also becoming a manager. And those are completely different skill sets, you know? So I think that's another thing. And something I've been very aware of, like I have particular skills And when I got into management, I said, I'm not going to forget everything. Just put it to the side for now and just completely shift my paradigm to like, what is this new thing?
You're absolutely right. And I'll have a mentor type chat with people I know, right? And the recent one, the guy said, I want to get into management. And I said, why do you want to get into management? He said, oh, you can make more money. And he was a sales guy, right? And so the career path is, and to make more money is management.
Yep.
And I go, wrong answer. Management's a horrible job. It's, unless you love people, unless you love getting the best out of people, it's a horrible job. And everyone I know when I've been coaching people, they've moved into management, I said, I'm going to come to you in 3 months' time and ask you, what's the biggest surprise? And every time it's, how many problems do these people bring to me, right? So it's sort of like, you've got to love people and you got to want to help and work with that. And you got to understand, by the way, you're not just doing it because you love people. If you get the most out of your team, you do well as the team manager, right? And then away you go. So I see that. I see, I'm now promoted up because I'm the best at this function. I'm an expert. Well, when I get promoted up, who do I replace myself with? An expert. When I get promoted up, it's on and on it goes. So the first problem is we're pushing up the wrong people. The second problem is we have the wrong processes in place. So another piece to the puzzle, there's team topologies, is beyond budgeting out of Scandinavia, right? And what beyond budgeting is saying an annual budget is a load of rubbish. So an annual budget, there's one thing an annual budget guarantees, and that is the department is going to spend all the budget. You don't get to the end of the year and say, oh, I can save the company 10% of my budget. Well, what happens next year? Your budget's 10% less.
Yeah.
We all sit there and let's creep over a bit so next year we can justify it. And then, of course, there's the games. We're all asking for more because we know we're not going to get it, and on it goes. And we're seeing large companies around the world following this beyond budgeting and throwing out annual budgets. And when I talk to finance people I know, they go, woo, right? But one of the guys in that is a guy called Beate Bogsnes. And what he says is that those managers are those experts that want to control because you can't trust the people. And then also they're saying, but I also can predict what money and how things are going to play out over the next 12 months. Well, how did 2020 go for that, right? You've got the three things. You got the structure, you got the wrong people in leadership and management positions because the structure drives that. And then you're trying to, and I'm calling this navigate the future, by having a fixed view of 12 months out and then getting stuck, right?
Yeah.
So they're the three challenges. Ideally, an enlightened CEO will do that, but we don't have that. So you and I, Stephen, we're sitting at the bottom of the heap. What do we do?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. I think, I think you mentioned something else when we caught up a couple of weeks ago as well. To answer functional silos, why not just say, let's do cross-functional teams? Is that the silver bullet solution?
I love the question. No. Yes and no. Yes and no, right? So everyone, it is, team topologies could be thought of as cross-functional teams, right? McKinsey have their helix structure, which is cross-functional teams. BCG has agile at scale, Spotify model. All these are cross-functional teams. So the next question I ask people is, who do they report to? Who do the players in the cross-functional team report to?
Yeah.
And either it's back into functional silos or it's into a matrix, where one arm of the matrix is the functional skills development and the other arm is trying to manage the cross-functional teams. The next question is, who owns the budget? Who owns the headcount? And it's nearly always the old traditional functional silo. So cross-functional teams is the right step, but we break them up back into, above that is we break them up into functional silos. So now, we're trying to compromise. We got sort of mini buckets of budget coming down into a cross-functional team, and we need to hire this skill more than that, but the money's over there and we can't do it and all that sort of stuff. Does that make sense?
It's like what happens is that there's a certain structure happening at the lower level, and at the upper level there's a different structure, and they're kind of mismatched. And is that kind of it?
Absolutely. There's this. I've got a YouTube channel plug for my YouTube channel. It's called Unlocking Change.
I'll put a link in the description.
Perfect. And I actually draw that. I draw the disconnect between here and here, right? And that's the problem. And so the poor people in the cross-functional team, they're going to get beat up, right? And by the way, the managers above them, how are they going to get promoted to the next level? Well, it's not if the cross-functional team is successful unless they can show their part is successful, right? Because we haven't changed the promotion system, right?
We are not the CEO with the backing of the board. So what can someone like me, who's a first level manager, actually do in the situation to make things better?
Well, I'm sure people listening to this have got a manager sharing the same frustration. And they might even have a manager of a manager sharing the same frustration. And at some stage, they're told to pull their head in, right? So one of the startups I was in was acquired by a large US software company. And after it was acquired, the CEO, and I ran things here in Australia and New Zealand differently to how they ran it in the US, right? And so now I'm hitting the brick wall. But the CEO came over of the startup, and we're having lunch together at Nando's. And he said, I'll give you the advice the chairman gave me. Shut the up. You're not going to win. You're not going to win. They're going to come in. They're going to chop it up. Don't try and fight it. You're not going to win, right? So you'll get to some stage where someone will tell you to shut the up. Find those managers if you can. And then what you just start doing, and this is what I did inside Telstra. And I said a small part of Telstra because everyone sells to Telstra and everyone's done something at Telstra and, blah, blah, blah. And if you go back a couple of years later, you won't find it there. Same with what I did. And this is public knowledge, I was the sales director responsible for the outsourcing of NAB's telecommunication network. Telstra, with another group, which was called Advantra at the time, this is going back to the noughties, they'd already done the desktop. We now signed up all the network. I now had, and my then group managing director, David Thodey, came to me and said, I want you to be the client director to run it. And I went, hang on, I did the contract. I know what's in it. I don't want to run it, right? And he said, no, you're doing it. All right. There was like 250 people working on NAB because we brought some of those people in and all that sort of stuff. Of the 250 people, only 25 reported to me, right? I was lucky enough. I had the sales team. I was lucky. Did I have the project office? I think I did, but no, not many others. The thing is, so what did we do? What I did as a manager was I created these virtual cross-functional teams. And one of the things I did was I aligned virtually the sales guys to the solution consultants to the implementers all the way down by division of the customer. So they started focusing on the customer, right? And because of that, we actually knew a lot more of what was going on in NAB than we ever would have. Every Friday morning, we ran a morning tea and came in, we put on biscuits, and I told them, here's what's going on, what are your questions, and away we go. When people not reporting to me came to me and said, I've got this problem, I'd go help them solve it. And I'd encourage my managers to go help them solve it. Because if we get it all right. Now, this annoyed some of my peers because we're in the services business now and they're in the infrastructure business. For me to be successful, I got to spend money. I got to hire consultants to do more work. I got to put more equipment in and all that sort of stuff, whereas they're trying to automate as much as possible, right? So that got a little bit frustrating. But what was interesting, we actually improved customer sat with the customer. We beat all of our financial numbers and people were a lot happier. And the final story in this was when it got to the end of the year employment engagement survey, those folks rang me up. And they said, we got a problem, Rob. And I said, what's the problem? Oh, it's your response rate. What, is it too low? No, it's too high. It was 200% because people who didn't report to me thought they did. Like they worked that way and they just said, yeah, we're working on this team and away we go. So inside organizations, especially those that are dysfunctional like this, everyone has got the opportunity. I was a manager. I could do it at my level, but individual contributors could do it by going and talking to other people. In DevOps, how many people spend time with product management? How many people spend time with the business? Another Telstra story was I'm moved on. I'm now in product management and we're trying to do mobile plans for business, but the consumer group were getting in the way, and in particular, one person. So I said to my individual contributor, I said, have you met them? No, they're just always on these big conference calls. Where do they work? 2 blocks away. How about we go meet them? So we set up this meeting and I'm coming, and the consumer guys got scared. Here's a second level manager coming along. What's going on, right? So they organised for their second level managers to be in the meeting. And so I'm sitting there and we go in there and I said to the person, I said, how can we help you?
Yeah.
We don't understand your business. We're not in consumer land. How can we help you? And that got the conversation going. Their second level manager left, I left, and they just kept going from then on. So people inside organizations, you reach out to other teams. You'll be surprised. You'll be so surprised what you'll learn, what they will want. How, you just change the conversation.
I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. There's a lot actually, but one of the things is it sounded like the way that you're talking about that is that you saw a situation and you came at it with that perspective of curiosity, rather than saying, oh, they're this problem, blah, 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 just to go, what's going on here? Like, how can we help them? How can they help us? Like, what's the best way forward, right? It's not always easy to do that. I speak for myself. Sometimes I get caught up in the politics of it and just not being able to step outside of it and just go, why is this? And be curious about it, and then you can solve anything. So that sounds good. But the other thing I've noticed in my own work is that over the years, I've seen this progression towards, and maybe it's just my perspective changing, but when I look back at the early stages of my career, it felt like there was stuff to do, but there seemed to be a little bit more space in the work that we're doing. Whereas to me, it feels like the culture of organizations around the world now is that everyone must be utilized doing stuff all the time. And for me, that completely makes what you're talking about, setting up those virtual teams, building those connections, much harder, because everyone's like under the pump, right? And to sit down and just have a human conversation is something that you kind of got to be in the right headspace for. And if you're like thinking about 17 fires that are burning, it's going to be hard to have that conversation in an effective way. So am I imagining that? Is the world changing, or am I just perceiving it in a different way?
You're on the money. Why are you on the money? Because we're all moving faster, but we're stuck in functional silos, which can't move faster. And we're stuck in annual budgets, which we can't change until the end of the year. So we gotta just keep running on the same mouse wheel, only trying to go faster, right?
Yeah.
So and let me put a word of caution in here, right? You just got to be careful how you do it, because what I'm encouraging people to do is kind of start a revolution from the ground up, because that's where revolutions come from. But people won't like you if they think that's what you're doing. So don't try. You got to balance that, right? So what I would do to try and buy time back is, do you ever get those emails that have gone to 10 people and say, please fix it? I always ignore them, because they've gone to 10 people, right? Someone's going to fix it. If they come to me, that's a different matter, right? If they say, Rob, please fix this, and copy 10 people, that's okay. But, how many managers send out these blanket things and say, hey, we need to fix this?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of busy work we can kind of just manage, right? And also, managers always want something urgent, right? And I've read stories about this where a previous White House administration, like 10 years, 15 years ago, the president muttered something on his way out Friday night, and suddenly they worked all weekend on it and presented him with all this stuff Monday morning. And what was this? Well, this is what you asked for, right? So you get a lot of managers that everything's urgent, right? And so you can either test whether it is urgent or not, or you go back and ask questions and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you got to carve out space to keep your sanity, right? You've got to somehow find space, and it can be late at night. It can be on a weekend to start. It can be, can I buy you a coffee, right? But you got to carve that out, because a couple of things come out of that. One is you mentioned that you're just getting busier and we're all getting burnt out and all that sort of stuff. When you start looking at it this way and saying, well, what are we actually trying to do here and how can we help each other? It actually changes how you view the world. Mm-hmm. In my master's, we studied a thing called vertical development. That's that leadership as you go up. It's got to have broader perspectives. And what that helped me understand is how my bosses were thinking, their approach. There's a book by Bill Torbear, who unfortunately passed away a couple of weeks ago, called Action Inquiry. I have to check that. But Bill Torbear, we'll put it in the notes. But he explains this. There's also a HBR article, 7 Transformations of Leadership. And I often give that out, obviously with permission, HBR. I give that out to people I'm coaching, right? And you read that and you can actually understand how people are behaving. This is not Myers-Briggs personality types. This is not those sorts of things. This is how they're thinking. And all of that just helped me stay calmer in the work situation and helped me understand, all right, they're coming from trying to do this. How can I? Now, it's not easy, by the way. This is not easy, but it really helps.
Yeah. I have a really good leadership mentor, Andrew Madavar, who, we've been working on exploring this idea of sort of emotional regulation as a manager, because you're always going to find yourself in these situations which are emotionally charged, or, but you can't, like, historically, say 2 or 3 years ago, I wouldn't say anything inappropriate, but I would be in this emotional state and unable to behave in a way which would achieve the outcome that I want because I'm too caught up in it, right? And I'm still working on that, right? It takes practice. And you see, it does take time, and you got to keep practicing it.
Because I developed this, and by the way, I was where you were, and when I worked in the US, I didn't understand the US culture, and I was this brash Aussie, and I went for it, right? But not a whole lot of other stories. When I went through this, I learned to sit back and just observe more of what was going and why people were saying it. And I learned more to ask those sort of questions. But then one of my bosses said to me, they called me something like, you're the black owl or something, where you're kind of sitting there just watching us. And then you come out and say, well, have you thought about this, and this? And of course, they hadn't, and it won't work. So that's where I go. Be careful if you're starting a revolution. Yeah, just got to be careful how you frame this. But geez, it helped my sanity.
Yeah.
Another tip, if anyone, and I don't do this anymore, but when I was, especially in the startup phases when it was just crazy, we were growing like crazy and all that sort of stuff, I used to meditate every morning, just for 20 minutes. I'd get up and the first thing I'd do is go find a quiet place and meditate for 20 minutes. And I found that really helpful. And it wasn't any fancy meditation. It was just trying to stop the brain to think, to spin, right? Which is impossible. But I found that help. That was a really calming thing for me.
Yeah, I have tried meditation a couple of times. It's not working for me yet. I'm not saying it never will, but it's just, maybe I'm just too noisy in my brain right now. But I do other things like just run, even just listening to audiobooks, I find really soothing. And I have this thing, apparently it's an emotional regulation technique as well. I watch the same TVs and movies series that I like a lot multiple times. There's something about seeing something familiar and it just helps you just calm down. It's probably not as good as meditating because I'm not, completely emptying the mind.
But running is, walking the dog is,
yeah,
all that sort of stuff. I also found, which I don't have time for much, but playing golf, because I concentrated on the golf, not on what was going on back in the office. Yeah, there's those techniques. So I think the message here, Stephen, is there's a lot that we can. It's just go and talk to others. Just give yourself some time to go and talk to others, and then it's going to raise a whole bunch of questions. And that was me. I told you the story when we caught up when I was working upstate New York in IBM's server division, and I reached out to the head of software databases, which was a completely different division, and we only came together at the CEO. Mm-hmm. And I set up a meeting to go and talk to her. And when I walked in the door, she said to me, "You're the first person from server division I've ever met."
Wild.
Right? And that's the challenge. I want everyone, go and talk to someone somewhere else in the organization, and you'll be amazed. What you learn, you'll be amazed at the response.
Now, I know we are running out of time, but I was thinking about, you're talking about those virtual teams, but in terms of identifying those virtual teams, would a starting point be to understand your team and the other teams that you need to interact with and what you interact for? Would that be a good starting point to sort of figure out, it'll be useful to build a bit of this virtual team or connection with these other teams?
Yes, absolutely. So I've mentioned to you before, Luke mentioned it to you, with team topologies, Luke and I have run these team interaction modeling workshops, right? And what it is it's a use case of a fictitious company and all the DevOps, and it's all the different teams in that, right? And the first part of the workshop is, right, map out how they are organized and how they work and where are all the handoffs and all that sort of stuff. You could do that. You can do that with your team, because suddenly you discover a whole lot of problems, and they have now in team topologies the undefined process, right? Or how does that work? And so then you can look at techniques. Now, you can just start virtually, right? And it's a good way to start, because you're not going to run into politics. You're not going to run into budget problems. You're going to do that. By the way, people will look at you like that. They want to know your motives.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help. Right? Again, Telstra's story, when I looked after all the data network enterprise sales teams, right? Trying to order a new system and put it through for it to be deployed was just, the guys were complaining. So I did a Gemba walk. Gemba out of, Japanese word, out of lean thinking, truth, all that sort of stuff. And they'd put in Netcracker, this software that was going to make this wonderful. What I found on the Gemba walk was they'd actually had to hire a team in between us and the Netcracker system to actually then reshape what we were sending them to be able to put into the system.
Wow. Yeah.
And there's like 11 people in that team, right? So do a Gemba walk, do just a map, right? Look at, so TradeMe uses team topologies, and they've got a case study in there late at the second edition, right? And the case study's up on the team topologies website, and you look at what they did. They actually have showed that kind of progressions, right? There's other, Belgium telco Telenet had got up there. They found they had to change the structure to away from the functional silos as well, above them, not just where they did it.
If I can, I'll put a link in the description. You showed me the structure of, I think it was Disney, and it was very interesting. I know we don't have a visual way to show people, but can you explain the Disney model just to give people a sense of where this could ultimately go? Yes.
So let me put the caveat. I'm not sure Disney actually operates this way, but this just makes sense for me. So what's Disney's mission statement? I talked about the business books, Simon Sinek, Start With Why, blah, blah, blah. What's their mission statement? And it's something like to be the leading provider of information entertainment globally that inspires people. They're not the right words, but something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I go to Magic Kingdom in Florida, right? And I buy an ice cream, and my kid drops the ice cream. The person selling ice cream goes, What's our mission statement? To be the leading... No. What's the mission statement of Magic Kingdom? We all know it as the happiest place on earth. So now I've got that, all right? So at Magic Kingdom, there's a thing called the Haunted House. So Magic Kingdom is its own self-contained value stream team. Mm-hmm. You can break it down below that. There's Epcot. There's, Studios, Hollywood Studios. There's all these things. They're operating in their own sort of team within teams. Mm-hmm. Then above that, you'll have someone who does Disney World Florida. Above that, you'll have a bigger team that's doing theme parks. But now I come to Hong Kong. I've got Haunted House in Magic Kingdom, but in the culture in Hong Kong and Japan is we actually honor the spirits. We honor the ghosts. They're not something to be afraid of. So because we got team in teams and we haven't just cookie cutted the same thing, we don't put a haunted house because the manager of that team of teams says, no, we will have Mystic Manor. How do you eat food in America at Magic Kingdom and especially Hollywood Studios? You walk around with these giant turkey legs eating. They look disgusting, right? When they set up Disneyland in outside of Paris in France, you do not walk around in France eating food. You don't even walk around takeaway coffees.
Really?
And I was talking to Rob Roe, who's big team topologies guys in Europe, and he was saying, yeah, when they set up Disney World outside of Paris, they didn't have much seating because you don't have much seating in Magic Kingdom. But the problem was you had huge queues, people waiting for seats because you sit down. So they knew to restructure. So this team within teams allows you to adapt to what you need to do for your market. And you then got to flow everything down like what I call nested mission statements. Yeah. And this is where OKRs come to the fore. The OKRs for selling ice cream in Florida is, were people happy with the ice cream? What's the popular flavors? It's not how much ice cream did we sell, right? And friends of mine daughter interned there for 6 months. So I sat down with her and I said, what did they train you when you got there? What if a child dropped an ice cream? And it was everything we just talked about. And the visualization of Disney allows you to think about, you talked about before, why not cross-functional teams? And I said, yeah, they report to functional silos. This gets rid of the functional silos.
Yeah. Well, we're all out of time. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I hope you had a reasonably enjoyable time.
Had a great time. We'll put up some things in the show notes or whatever. I want to help change the organizational world. All my stuff is Creative Commons. So my YouTube channel, my websites, everything, just use. If you got questions, reach out to me. I'll put my email up there as well.
And to everyone else out there, hope you have a wonderful week and I'll see you next time.